Growing a successful garden is often like following a recipe.
An order of operations where each subsequent step relies on the one previous.
And just like your favorite dishes that have more than one recipe, gardening is the same, in that there's more than one way to grow a crop.
Therein lies the confusion for the beginner gardener that's just starting out. Mountains of information and not enough experience to decipher it all.
Hi, I'm Jeff from the Ripe Tomato Farms, and welcome to part 2 of the 4-part series, Growing Your First Garden.
A set of videos where we help new growers plan and plant for the first time, from water to nutrients and flowers to fruit.
Today is all about the 3 S's: soil, seeds, and spacing. If you haven't checked out part 1 of this series, here's the link right here. If you have, let's get started.
As a new gardener, you'll find out pretty quickly that soil is quite literally the foundation for healthy plants.
Beyond the obvious of supplying support for the roots of our crops, soil is the engine that powers the entire garden.
Everything good that happens in our garden starts with our soil.
Think of it as a giant grocery store for our plants.
It's where they get their food, water, and oxygen to complete every single life process.
And there's this direct correlation between a healthy soil and healthy plants.
Many veteran growers adopt the motto, grow and feed your soil so that it can grow and feed your plants.
What this means is a healthy, active, functioning soil profile
will in turn support greater plant growth and require little to no extra chemical additives.
Soil is a non-renewable resource. It can take a lifetime to build up, or it can be lost in a single season. With such importance bestowed upon it, here's 4 ways to cultivate and maintain the healthiest soils possible. The first thing you want to do is to always be amending it. And the number 1 resource to amend your soils with is compost. Compost is a wonder product, provided you have the space to make it. Adding compost to your soil throughout the year has many benefits, but 4 really stick out.
Compost is going to help to improve your soil's drainage while simultaneously improving the moisture retention. And when you think about it, this is an amazing cycle of opposed functionality. Third, your compost is going to return a wide range of nutrients back to your soil, so much so that some growers use compost as their sole source of fertilizer. Lastly, soil as a complex web of activity is only as strong as its microinhabitants.
Soil microorganisms are essential in the cycle of nutrients, taking them from not available to our plants to available.
These microorganisms are also protectors. They protect our plants from disease and from harmful fungal outbreaks. Not only that, they can even purify the soil.
Compost is teeming with all levels of life, and the inoculation of your garden with it supercharges your soil and in turn your plants. Okay, the next way to cultivate a healthy soil is to protect it.
And universally, the most common way to do this is to mulch. Nature readies itself for the harshest conditions every fall by shedding its foliage and forming a protective layer, fully encapsulating its top layers of soil.
This is by design and without fail.
Same thing with your garden. A heavy, thick mulch layer is going to preserve moisture, prevent compaction, eliminate erosion, add organic matter, and even some nutrients.
There's no doubt about it. From now until the end of time, a mulch soil is a healthy soil.
Mulch a step further, we can grow cover crops. Cover crops are living mulches, fast-growing plants, often grasses, that are grown over times of dormancy in our garden. They do everything a mulch does, but even better. Their protection is unmatched, and when given a choice between mulching and growing a cover crop, I'm always going to pick a cover crop. Do bear in mind that while you can and should always mulch your vegetables, cover plants are only grown in the absence of your garden crops.
So in the grand scheme of a modern backyard garden, there's a place for both. And the final way that I protect and cultivate the soils of my garden is to not use chemicals or synthetics. In the rare case that my soils need extra nutrients, I'll always add slow release amendments instead. I use compost and cover crops for weed suppression instead of herbicides. And I minimize the soil disturbance by practicing no-till and no-dig farming wherever possible. Your soil is going to be your biggest ally to growing the best fruits and veggies. Protect and cultivate it, and you'll see the results every season. Okay, soil is a biggie, and we could talk about it for hours. For more in-depth soil-related videos, though, I'll leave a ton of links down in the description. The next S is for seeds. Every crop we grow, other than the few we grow from cuttings, starts their life cycle as a seed. Whether we direct sow or start the seeds early indoors and then transplant, the seed is the beginning of the crop. And one of the great things about our modern world is the seed packet. These things are filled with all the information, in a generic sense, that you need to grow the potential crop inside. When to plant, how deep to plant, exposure, time to harvest, all that stuff. While it's not everything a beginner needs to know to grow the crop, in my opinion, it's a good starting point. I've done a whole video just on decoding seed packets. Check it out right here. All right, as a new grower, your two biggest things you need to figure out for a crop is going to be whether or not you direct sow your seeds or pre-start them indoors, and when is the right time to plant. The local climate that you live in is likely going to dictate and make these choices for you, but certain situations could arise that change your plans. Take herbs, for example. When I'm growing them outdoors, I often pre-start my herbs like arugula, cilantro, dill, and basil, and then I transplant them once they're established. Indoors, however, there's simply no need for this transitory step. If I'm growing my herbs indoors over winter, I'll simply direct sow them into their final pots because they grow so fast, and transplanting is completely unnecessary. Also, some plants are either too troublesome to transplant, such as carrots or beets, while others grow so quick transplanting seems to be a waste of time, like corn or peas. It's all about finding what works best for you, the plants, your climate, and the situation. And how about the seeds themselves? Well, think of them as tiny dormant vessels waiting to explode with life. And all seeds, regardless of the variety of plant, need two things to accomplish this: moisture and heat. You'll find that pretty much all seeds germinate at the most efficient rate between 75 and 85 degrees Fahrenheit, even if they're a cold weather plant. So keep this in mind when both direct seeding and pre-planting indoors. As for moisture, water is the unlock that actually facilitates germination itself. Through a process known as imbibition, the seeds absorb water, expand, and the seed coats crack. Food for the seed, as well as enzymes, become hydrated and activated, and the germination process begins. For most of our crops in the ideal temperature range, this process takes around a week or less. But while seeds in a dormant state seem pretty protected, they actually don't last forever. They all have a shelf life, and some seeds last longer than others. Whenever you're troubleshooting potential germination problems, always check your conditions first. But even if you follow all the steps and do everything perfectly, you can still get crops that disappoint. Although it's not super common, it's not unheard of to have unviable seed. The solution to this is to test your seeds, and it's actually quite simple. You can test for seed viability right at home by placing a small sample set of the seeds in damp paper towel for about 1 to 2 weeks. At temperatures slightly above room temperature, you'll know soon enough if the seeds themselves are the problem. No doubt it's a slight annoyance to have unviable seed, even if you catch it early. But if you find out much later, well, it's more than annoying, as you might just miss that window for that crop entirely. Okay, that's seeds in a nutshell. Direct sowing versus transplanting, and ensuring that the seeds are viable. Solve those two questions and you're golden. Okay, now we have spacing. Plants need room to grow. And no two plants are the same. Even though that garlic is closely related to these green onions, Look at the difference in their spacing.
But no matter what, plants need room, both for the foliage above and for the network of roots down below.
Although there's always room to tweak and experiment, the spacing requirements for all of our crops are known and documented. There's no need to reinvent the wheel here. Now, despite this, one trick growers often do when they're direct seeding certain varieties of plants is they'll sow more seeds than is necessary.
It's only for certain crops, but it's on purpose, and it's to ensure that there's enough germinated plants for the given space. What ends up happening is that the plants are thinned later on a few weeks after germination to the required spacing. We see it in beets, carrots, and even corn. For young transplants that you pre-started somewhere else, usually the adult spacing needs are observed right away. Now, this does result in a rather bare-looking garden initially. This is normal. Don't be tempted to fill in the empty gaps. Within a few weeks, the plants are going to grow into the space. If you plant in the empty spots, quickly your garden will be crowded and none of the plants are going to have the adequate spacing. It's a common first-time mistake, and I see it all the time. Observe the spacing rules for each plant, and you'll be just fine. Now, there are times when you can plant close together, and the crops won't compete with each other. You can intersperse crops that have different patterns of foliage, as well as varying root depths with great success. Grow something like peas, carrots, and tomatoes together, or grow basil among your pepper plants. You can also stagger the rows of defined plants like lettuce and zucchinis so that there's more efficient use of space. Get creative. Just keep in mind that overcrowded plants will most likely not produce as well. With your soil, your seeds, and your spacing all figured out, the concept of your first garden is beginning to take shape. And as the puzzle pieces start to fall into place, the mystery surrounding how to successfully grow a garden becomes less and less.
Rolling into video 3, we'll switch our focus to the 3 P's of gardening: plants, planting, and patience. We'll continue to build on what we've covered so far. It should be a good one.
Hey, thanks so much for watching, guys. I appreciate the support more than you know. And if you're getting value from these videos, please like and share them to spread the word and help your fellow gardener to grow better.